Night School. An excerpt from Will You Please Be Quiet, Please? Stories by Raymond Carver. Night School. My marriage had just fallen apart. I couldn't find a job. I had another girl, but she wasn't in town. So I was at a bar having a glass of beer, and two women were sitting a few stools down, and one of them began to talk to me. "You have a car?" "I do, but it's not here," I said. My wife had the car. I was staying at my parents' place. I use their car sometimes, but tonight I was walking. The other woman looked at me. They were both about 40, maybe older. "What'd you ask him?" the other woman said to the first woman. "I said, did he have a car?" "So, do you have a car?" the second woman said to me. I was telling her I have a car, but I don't have it with me, I said. "That doesn't do us much good, does it?" she said. The first woman laughed. "We had a brainstorm, and we need a car to go through with it." "Too bad." She turned to the bartender and asked for 2 more beers. I'd been nursing my beer along, and now I drank it off and thought they might buy me around. They didn't. "What do you do?" the first woman asked me. "Right now, nothing," I said. "Sometimes, when I can, I go to school." "He goes to school," she said to the other woman. "He's a student. Where do you go to school?" "Around," I said. "I told you," the woman said. "Doesn't he look like a student?" "What are they teaching you?" the second woman said. "Everything," I said. "I mean," she said, "what do you plan to do? What's your big goal in life?" Everybody has a big goal in life. I raised my empty glass to the bartender. He took it and drew me another beer. I counted out some change, which left me with 30 cents from the $2 I'd started out with a couple of hours ago. She was waiting. Teach school," I said. "He wants to be a teacher," she said. I sipped my beer. Someone put a coin in the jukebox, and a song that my wife liked began to play. I looked around. 2 men near the front were at the shuffleboard. The door was open, and it was dark outside. "We're students too, you know," the first woman said. "We go to school." "We take a night class," the other one said. "We take this reading class on Monday nights." The first woman said, "Why don't you move down here, teacher, so we don't have to yell?" I picked up my beer and my cigarettes and moved down 2 stools. "That's better," she said. "Now, did you say you were a student?" "Sometimes, yes, but not now," I said. "Where?" "State College." "That's right," she said. "I remember now." She looked at the other woman. "You ever hear of a teacher over there named Patterson? He teaches adult education classes. He teaches this class we take on Monday nights. You remind me a lot of Patterson." They looked at each other and laughed. "Don't bother about us," the first woman said. "It's a private joke. Shall we tell him what we thought about doing, Edith? Shall we?" Edith didn't answer. She took a drink of beer and she narrowed her eyes as she looked at herself, at the 3 of us in the mirror behind the bar. "We were thinking," the first woman went on, "if we had a car tonight, we'd go over and see him. Patterson, right, Edith?" Edith laughed to herself. She finished her beer and asked for a round, 1 for me included. She paid for the beers with a $5 bill. "Patterson likes to take a drink," Edith said. "You can say that again," the other woman said. She turned to me. "We talked about it in class one night. Patterson says he always has wine with his meals and a highball or 2 before dinner." What class is this? I said. This reading class Patterson teaches. Patterson likes to talk about different things. We're learning to read, Edith said. Can you believe it? I'd like to read Hemingway and things like that, the other woman said. But Patterson has us reading stories like in Reader's Digest. We take a test every Monday night, Edith said. But Patterson's okay. He wouldn't care if we came over for a highball. Wouldn't be much he could do anyway. We have something on him. On Patterson, she said. We're on the loose tonight, the other woman said. But Edith's car is in the garage. If you had a car now, we'd go over and see him, Edith said. She looked at me. You could tell Patterson you wanted to be a teacher. You'd have something in common. I finished my beer. I hadn't eaten anything all day except some peanuts. It was hard to keep listening and talking. Let's have 3 more, please, Jerry, the first woman said to the bartender. Thank you, I said. You'd get along with Patterson, Edith said. So call him, I said. I thought it was just talk. I wouldn't do that, she said. He could make an excuse. We just show up on his porch, he'll have to let us in. She sipped her beer. So let's go, the first woman said. What are we waiting for? Where'd you say the car is? There's a car a few blocks from here, I said, but I don't know. Do you want to go or don't you? Edith said. He said he does, the first woman said. We'll get a 6-pack to take with us. I only have 30 cents, I said. Who needs your goddamn money? Edith said. We need your goddamn car. Jerry, let's have 3 more and a 6-pack to go. Here's to Patterson, the first woman said when the beer came. To Patterson and his highballs. He'll drop his cookies, Edith said. Drink up, the first woman said. On the sidewalk, we headed south, away from town. I walked between the 2 women. It was about 10 o'clock. I could drink one of those beers now, I said. Help yourself, Edith said. She opened the sack and I reached in and tore a can loose. We think he's home, Edith said. Patterson, the other woman said. We don't know for sure, but we think so. How much farther? Edith said. I stopped, raised the beer, and drained half the can. The next block, I said. I'm staying with my parents. It's their place. I guess there's nothing wrong with it, Edith said. But I'd say you're kind of old for that. That's not polite, Edith, the other woman said. Well, that's the way I am, Edith said. He'll have to get used to it, that's all. That's the way I am. That's the way she is, the other woman said. I finished the beer and tossed the can into some weeds. Now how far? Edith said. This is it, right here. I'll try and get the car key, I said. Well, hurry up, Edith said. We'll wait outside, the other woman said. Jesus, Edith said. I unlocked the door and went downstairs. My father was in his pajamas watching television. It was warm in the apartment, and I leaned against the jamb for a minute and ran a hand over my eyes. I had a couple of beers, I said. What are you watching? John Wayne, he said. It's pretty good. Sit down and watch it. Your mother hasn't come in yet. My mother worked the swing shift at Paul's, a Hofbrau restaurant. My father didn't have a job. He used to work in the woods, and then he got hurt. He'd had a settlement, but most of that was gone now. I asked him for a loan of $200 when my wife left me, but he refused. He had tears in his eyes when he said no, and said he hoped I wouldn't hold it against him. I'd said it was all right. I wouldn't hold it against him. I knew he was going to say no this time too, but I sat down on the other end of the couch and said, I met a couple of women who asked me if I'd give them a ride home. What'd you tell them? He said. They're waiting for me upstairs, I said. Just let them wait, he said. Somebody will come along. You don't want to get mixed up in that. He shook his head. You really didn't show them where we live, did you? They're not really upstairs? He moved on the couch and looked again at the television. Anyway, your mother took the keys with her. He nodded slowly, still looking at the television. That's okay, I said. I don't need the car. I'm not going anywhere. I got up and looked into the hallway where I slept on a cot. There was an ashtray, a Lux clock, and a few old paperbacks on a table beside the cot. I usually went to bed at midnight and read until the lines of print went fuzzy, and I fell asleep with the light on and the book in my hands. In one of the paperbacks I was reading, there was something I remembered telling my wife. It made a terrific impression on me. There's a man who has a nightmare, and in the nightmare, he dreams he's dreaming and wakes to see a man standing at his bedroom window. The dreamer is so terrified he can't move, can hardly breathe. The man at the window stares into the room and then begins to pry off the screen. The dreamer can't move. He'd like to scream, but he can't get his breath. But the moon appears from behind a cloud, and the dreamer in the nightmare recognizes the man outside. It's his best friend, the best friend of the dreamer, but no one the man having the nightmare knows. Telling it to my wife, I'd felt the blood come to my face and my scalp prickle, but she wasn't interested. That's only writing, she said. Being betrayed by somebody in your own family, there's a real nightmare for you. I could hear them shaking the outside door. I could hear footsteps on the sidewalk over my window. God damn that bastard, I heard Edith say. I went into the bathroom for a long time, and then I went upstairs and let myself out. It was cooler, and I did up the zipper on my jacket. I started walking to Paul's. If I got there before my mother went off duty, I could have a turkey sandwich. After that, I could go to Kirby's newsstand and look through the magazines. Then I could go to the apartment to bed and read the books until I read enough and I slept. The women, they weren't there when I left, and they wouldn't be there when I got back.